Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Sunday morning to you all. I hope you guys are doing awesome out there this morning and having a fantastic start to your day and a great weekend out there so far. Here to bring you the latest on everything that we got. The first thing we'll discuss, of course, is an update on the tropics, Hurricane Beryl, which we're waking up to a 100-mile-per-hour Category 2 hurricane. And I just want to reiterate this information will change as this is in the process of strengthening. So by the time some of you folks watch this video, it could be a major hurricane, which is 115 miles per hour or higher, but this thing is forecast to become a Category 4 hurricane now. They keep, bumping up the intensity forecast, and now it's expected to be a Category 4 hurricane before it even approaches the Windward Islands. Okay, so we got a lot to talk about, a lot to discuss in this video. Of course, the first thing we'll talk about is how it's doing right now. We'll go over the latest from the National Hurricane Center. We'll go over all the latest model guidance that we got from overnight to this morning. And we'll talk about impacts, and then we'll talk about what's driving the system. We'll continue to do that, even though, we've done it over the last several videos. I think it's important to keep doing that for any new viewers, people who haven't seen that portion of the video. We'll kind of nerd out on you guys and just explain why this system is doing so well for this early in hurricane season, and basically a portion of the ocean, of the Atlantic Ocean, that typically does not get active until like August and early September. So we're really going to talk about the environmental background of this system and really nerd out on you guys there a little bit. So we'll talk about all that. We'll break it down. We'll get very detailed, take advantage of those timestamps. And after we get it done doing that, we'll do what we usually do in the morning videos, and we'll speak on what's going to happen weather-wise across the entire lower 48 for your Sunday to keep you guys prepared. So because there is going to be a risk of strong and severe storms for areas of the eastern U.S. that we do certainly need to keep you guys aware of. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. It helps to get these videos out to more people, and it definitely, I certainly appreciate it. I just want to say welcome to any new subscribers, new viewers to the family. This channel is a little bit different than other YouTubers or YouTube channels. It's certainly like a family type atmosphere here. We keep things personal. There's nothing too flashy about this channel, but one thing we do here is look out for one another, and we keep you guys, certainly aware of what's going on. We pump out 2 videos a day when it's active like this to try to keep you guys updated with the latest information to keep you guys covered. So if you guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below so I can pray over it and so others can do so too. So let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So this is Hurricane Beryl, a Category 2 100-mile-per-hour hurricane as of around 6:40 a.m. Eastern Time. They'll drop another update in about an hour. They could bump this up to 105, 110, maybe 115-mile-per-hour hurricane. But just note, none of this information is really going to change that much over the next several hours. And of course, we'll have you another evening update later on today, kind of giving you the latest information. But this hurricane is doing well. It's doing very well this morning. As you can tell in this black, the white, even pink colors, this is colder cloud tops, higher cloud tops, which tells us there's some intense convection located really in the inner eye wall, outer eye wall of this hurricane. And you can see, I would say the strongest convection is probably on the eastern to northern side of the system, but this is starting to wrap completely around the center of circulation, and you can see how the eye is trying to clear out now. You see that little opening here. We're getting a little bit of warming, which means we have lower cloud tops, which tells us there's an eye, there's a clearing trying to develop. It's tried a couple times over the last several hours. It's still trying right now, and I think by the time we get over the next several hours, it will succeed in doing so. And when you start to have that cleared out eye, you know that this is a healthy hurricane. So it's in the process of doing that right now. But this hurricane is very healthy, has an excellent upper wind pattern to it, upper flow to it. It's ventilating well and doing exactly what we thought it was going to do. But the thing is that the peak intensity keeps increasing. So it's just overachieving out here. It's just incredible what we are seeing out here in this portion of the Atlantic Ocean. So let's take a more zoomed out look at this system, more broad look. The sun is coming up on this system out here, and I mean, it doesn't take an expert in the weather to see what we're seeing here, which is a very large, very healthy hurricane. And I say large, it looks large, but I would say the worst of the impacts are really kind of confined right in the inner portion of this hurricane. It's not spread out much. We think this is going to be a pretty compact hurricane, as far as where the most intense conditions are going to be, and we'll speak on that later in this video. But this is a healthy hurricane, and I'm going to draw on this a little bit. Let's make sure this works first, and it does. We'll draw it here and use the old pink color. But you can tell, all right, nice cyclonic flow with this system, which is what you would expect for a higher end Category 2 hurricane, spinning like this. Okay, I'm going to keep that on your screen. What I want you to notice here, see these clouds up into here? Kind of right into here in these areas. Okay, these are these high cirrus clouds kind of getting dispersed this way, and then this is getting dispersed that way. You can even kind of see it down here too. You know, these higher end clouds getting pushed outward, and even right into here. Okay, all right, so this has an excellent upper wind pattern associated with it. So it's positioned kind of in an environment in the upper levels of the atmosphere that promotes just consistent convection to keep on popping. So this is able to really maintain a very moist environment. No dry air is getting involved in this system. Any tropical system is going to deal with something, whether it's a very low amount of shear, a low amount of dry air, even if it's a very healthy hurricane. But this system is really in an environment that where it's just doing very well. It's thriving out here. But this is a favorable upper wind pattern. You got a nice outflow. Winds are basically getting pushed out away from the center of this storm, as you can tell, in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So as winds are getting pushed out, this allows more air to rise in the middle of the hurricane, and really in just all areas of this hurricane. So as air is able to rise, we know that rising air allows for more shower and storm activity, more convection, more consistent, persistent convection is able to fire at will in this hurricane. So it's breathing well, it's ventilating very well out here, and as that air rises, it gets dispersed outward, allowing for more air to rise. And this is going to be the environment in the upper levels of the atmosphere with this system for the next few to as much as several days, even as it gets into the Caribbean, which is this time of the year in the Eastern Caribbean is considered the graveyard of the Caribbean, because the trade winds typically impact these tropical systems with a lot of shear this time of the year in hurricane season. But we don't think that's going to be much of the case with this system, but it is doing well. You can see the outflow pushing out away, a nice anticyclonic flow positioned somewhat over this system, allowing for an excellent outflow. So I just want to kind of show you guys that, and we'll talk about more on that when we kind of show you why this is doing so well, why we'll continue to do so well. There'll be kind of a separate segment of that. So this is a look at it. Very healthy hurricane. Latest information, excuse me, that we have from the 5 a.m. update. This has a central pressure of around 981 millibars. It's still moving pretty quickly west at about 21 miles per hour, so it's a pretty quick moving hurricane. But it's a 100 mile per hour Category 2 hurricane. We'll have another update probably in about 45 minutes to an hour. They might bump this up another 5 to 10 miles per hour. Heck, they might bump it up to a major hurricane, which is 115 miles per hour, Category 3 or higher. But as of right now, it's a 100 mile per hour hurricane. If we take a look at the latest cone, okay, this is from the National Hurricane Center. I'm going to show you another look at this here in a second from Zoom Earth, which is an awesome site, by the way. But you see where it says M, that's forecast to become, where it is forecast to become a major hurricane. So this is going to become a major hurricane before it begins to impact Barbados, the Windward Islands. Will maintain a major status as it cruises across the eastern areas of the Caribbean. Gets into the Central Caribbean. Still a major Category 3 hurricane. And it still will be a hurricane by the time it either impacts directly Jamaica or at least scrapes Jamaica. And still a hurricane now forecast to be later this work week into the Western Caribbean. Then what is it going to do as it tries to kind of sneak into the Gulf of Mexico? That's when everybody in the U.S. will have certainly our eyes on this thing. So this is the latest cone. We got hurricane warnings up for the Windward Islands. But what I think is an even better way to look at this, I mean, look at this hurricane. Big hurricane, 100 mile per hour storm, okay, is what we call Zoom Earth. It's basically like combining Google Maps with the tropics. It's an awesome, friendly user site to use, and it's just phenomenal. It's easy to kind of toggle with and to mess with. But anyways, forecast to become a major hurricane probably in the next update or two from the National Hurricane Center. I would guess it's going to happen at 11 a.m., 2 p.m., but it might happen on the next update. But I would say a little bit later this morning to early this afternoon, this will get upgraded to a Category 3 hurricane. This is in the process of rapidly intensifying, guys. So this is strengthening at a very fast pace. Okay, Barbados here, forecast to go up another 15 miles per hour to 130 mile per hour Category 4 major hurricane by the time we get into the overnight hours. It looks like it's going to kind of go in between Trinidad and Barbados right here. And then it starts to stare down the Windward Islands, which if you see the red colors here and here, these are hurricane warnings. These are tropical storm warnings up here in like Martinique. Dominica has tropical storm watches, and then we got those tropical storm warnings down here. But if we kind of zoom into right here, we got to figure out where the core of this hurricane is going to go over. Okay, is it going to go over the community of Hillsborough, up here? And if I butcher any of these names out here in the Windward Islands, please forgive me if you live out here, because I might do so. Because I don't pretend to know every small little island out here. But Grenada, however way y'all pronounce it, you guys certainly are going to get the southern edge of that storm. And then up here in St. Vincent, Port Elizabeth, how close is the core of this system going to get to you guys as we get into, this is, for example, this is where the eye is going to be, probably around 2 a.m. tonight. And then, sometime tomorrow morning into tomorrow afternoon, where is the core of this system going to move over? Barbados, we're pretty confident this is going to move south of you guys, but you're certainly going to get hit by, you might get hit by the outer eye wall of this system, which is pretty intense. But the inner eye wall, the portion of the storm circulating right around that low-level circulation, the actual eye of the system, we think that'll be south. Whoever gets hit by that will get those 115, 130 mile per hour wind gusts. So we are certainly praying for you guys out in the Windward Islands, but we just got to figure out where the inner eye wall of this system is going to go over. And I really think Barbados, I know I got some people tuning in from that area, it's going to go south of you guys, but you're still going to get hefty impacts. Okay? And then we continue. We're going to zoom back out. This is still a Category 4 hurricane as it gets into the Eastern Caribbean. We'll kind of zoom out a little bit more. You look at Puerto Rico up here, the Virgin Islands. This will probably start to weaken a little bit, but it's still a high-end Category 3 hurricane in the Eastern Caribbean. All right, as we're starting to get into 2 p.m. Tuesday, still Category 3, 120 mile per hour hurricane based off this update from the National Hurricane Center. Hispaniola, Dominican Republic, Haiti right here. Okay, 115 mile per hour hurricane, 2 a.m. Wednesday. And look, Jamaica's right here. Okay, this is 2 a.m. Wednesday, so we're obviously, by the time it's right in here, this is probably Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon. Jamaica, I know I got some people tuning in from that area. Looks like your worst impacts will be sometime during the morning or day or afternoon, evening, or in that entire time frame, Wednesday. You're most likely going to have at minimum a Category 1 to Category 2 hurricane skirting south of you guys, but you're still in the cone, so that means the center of this could still go right over you guys. Cayman Islands here, looks like it's going to go south of you guys, but like I said, you're in the cone. That means the center of this is still possible to go over to this area. But it'll be south of the Cayman Islands, 105 mile per hour Category 2 hurricane still. And then it looks like the entire Yucatan Peninsula is in this cone. Okay, you guys could get impacted by another tropical system, but this one will be more intense than what you've seen so far this hurricane season. But guys, this cone could shift. Okay, and then we have to watch as we get into this coming weekend after the 4th of July. Is this going to sneak into the Bay of Campeche or the Gulf of Mexico? That's a big question right now, but there's so much focus going on what's going on with this system right now that, that's 7 to 10 days out. I mean, it's pretty wild how long we're going to be talking about this. I would say more so 5 to 8 days out. So that's the latest from the National Hurricane Center. All right, let's go over some model guidance. I think the GFS by far has done the best with this system, which typically it's the other way around. But the GFS can do good in the tropics sometimes, especially with sniffing out a stronger tropical system. It does pretty well with that. So it's saying, and keep in mind, this thing right now is a 981 millibar storm. But I think even the GFS is initializing this too weak, because it's saying it only drops 2 millibars to a 979 millibar hurricane by the time we get into this evening. So I think it's still initializing this too weak. But let's keep this going. Let's mainly focus on the path of this, not so much the strength. Okay, because I think that this will be a much stronger, deeper storm than 975, because the more this number drops, millibars, guys, the stronger the system. But of course, Monday morning, it's affecting the Windward Islands. Who is going to get the worst of it? We got to figure that one out. We get into Monday evening. This sneaks into the Eastern Caribbean. And, what is going to be the strength of this system? Still saying sub 980 millibar low pressure hurricane at this point. I think it'll be stronger than this. But as it continues to, as we continue to get into Tuesday evening, how close does it get to that higher terrain in Hispaniola, Dominican Republic, and Haiti? If it gets too close to it, then it will disrupt the cyclonic flow of this system and probably weaken. Okay. But it looks like it nudges and starts to move after looking like it's moving west-northwest for a period. It looks like it starts to move due west again. Okay, does Jamaica get directly impacted? The GFS says you almost get a landfall of a hurricane. But as you can tell, that the millibar number from like Tuesday evening to Wednesday begins to rise, which means this is a weakening system. It looks like it encounters some shear right here. Okay. Also, maybe some interaction with land. Okay, and then it gets away from land, brings impacts as maybe a Category 1 hurricane based off this run of the GFS. Remember, the National Hurricane Center has it stronger than this. Brings impacts to the Cayman Islands, and it looks like that number begins to drop again. And I think that this will have an opportunity to maybe strengthen in the Western Caribbean. Hits the Yucatan Peninsula as whatever it's going to be, we're not sure. And then it gets into the Gulf of Mexico, and then this is when we have to be concerned about the U.S. and Mexico. But if it gets into the Gulf of Mexico, guys, all bets are off. And this is like next Saturday, guys, July the 6th. This begins to steadily try to strengthen again and makes landfall in Texas. Okay, and I want you guys to see this also. There is another system behind this, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about this at the end of this update. There is another system behind this that's now Invest 96L. But this is coming up behind it. All right, this is getting into Wednesday morning. Tropical storm becomes a hurricane. This is moving a little bit further north than what Hurricane Beryl is going to be doing. This makes a direct landfall in Barbados, hits areas of more of the northern Windward Islands, getting into the Leeward Islands, and then this sneaks into the Eastern Caribbean, okay, as a hurricane based off the GFS. And a pretty strong one at that, 977 millibar, basically going over the same areas that Beryl went. And then what is this going to do? Well, it starts to weaken pretty quick. But we got to watch this one too, right behind it. This would most likely be Tropical Storm Chris becoming Hurricane Chris, which is our next name in the hurricane list of names, the C name. So, there's not just Beryl to worry about. There's a system right behind this too that will try to go over the same areas. We got to figure out what the steering currents are going to be with this one, because I think they'll be a little bit different. Now, what about the European? The European is initializing terribly with this system, so we're just going to skip ahead to Tuesday morning. Okay, still a strong hurricane. It definitely gets due south of Hispaniola as we're getting into Tuesday evening. Okay, we're getting into Wednesday morning. If you're in Jamaica, you are certainly not pulling for the European, because this has this as a sub 970 millibar hurricane, which would be probably a Category 3 hurricane just south of Jamaica Wednesday. I definitely think Wednesday is going to be the day in Jamaica. That would be a bad scenario, okay, especially if it directly impacts it. But this thing looks very compact hurricane. But man, look at this. It is, the European is a scenario that I'm watching. Okay, it maintains a very strong storm system. Okay, Thursday morning, okay, starts to slow down, looks like. We're getting a Friday morning, makes landfall. Central America, the Yucatan Peninsula, areas of Mexico as a major hurricane. Okay, this coming Friday. And then it tries to sneak back into the Bay of Campeche, begins to re-strengthen again potentially. And then we have to watch it again as it makes a secondary landfall into Mexico. Okay, it doesn't do really anything with the wave behind it, really, which I'm not buying either. So if you look at some ensemble guidance, we'll take a look at the European ensemble guidance this time. This makes up 51 members. Okay, this is what ran overnight. So this first little cluster of L's, this is obviously Hurricane Beryl, and you're going to see another cluster come up behind it. So we keep this in motion. Okay, all of them pretty tightly clustered into the Caribbean, right? What's going to happen once this gets into the Central Caribbean? I think there'll be a period of weakening because shear will increase. I think it'll deal with some southwest shear. We'll talk about that here in a second. Okay, but there is some spread. Some of these members are hitting like, Haiti. Some of them are getting well south of Jamaica. See the signal right behind this? But I tell you what, Jamaica really has a lot of members hitting them. But there's a lot of members going south of Jamaica, hanging out in the Central Caribbean, right smack in the middle. See the signal coming in behind it too? That'll be Chris, most likely. Unless 94L takes the name sometime in the next 24 hours. Then this will be Debbie. But this will most likely be Chris right here coming in behind it. And it looks like the majority of the members off the European ensemble really takes us into Central America. You got a percentage of the members that gets into the Northwest Caribbean and tries to sneak into the Gulf of Mexico. But listen, the sign behind this one too is there too. It doesn't look as strong, but there is a lot of members that do slam this into Central America. But then there's a lot of members also that gets this back into the Bay of Campeche and tries to maybe re-strengthen this again. Okay, we have to watch for any weaknesses in this ridge, because if there's any weaknesses, this will try to sneak back north. Okay, and we'll speak on that here in a second too. Now, if we look at a hurricane model, and let's see if we have another one out. We might have the latest. Let's see. Nah, it doesn't go out far enough. So we're going to stick with the OOZ HFA model. Okay, it's initializing this at 975 this evening. I still think that's a little bit too weak. I think this will be lower in millibars, but Barbados beginning to show up on your screen right here. All right, we start to get into, this is the middle of the night tonight. We're starting to get some outer bands into the Windward Islands, into Barbados. But as you can see and tell here, the core of this storm, I mean, this is like tomorrow morning, right? Like 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. You're getting hit by some nasty outer bands in Barbados, strong gusty winds, no doubt about it. But the core of this system, based off this run, is well south of Barbados. Okay? This continues to move here. It looks like it goes, like I said, in between like Grenada and then like the St. Vincent. And then, impacts these smaller islands right in here between both of those. Martinique up here, looks like the worst of it is going to be well south. But we just got to worry about, we got to keep you guys prepared in these smaller islands in between this one and Grenada here, Hillsborough, Port Elizabeth, and all these smaller islands here. This is what I worry about here. And I don't know all the names of all these islands. I wish one of these days I'll have all that memorized. But yeah, certainly a worrisome scenario for you guys. So, and this looks to be, sometime tomorrow, midday. Whoever is getting hit by this eye wall, guys, that's where you're going to see the 115, 130 mile per hour winds. Okay, gusts could be even higher. This moves through, you continue to get the impacts behind this system, and then this fully gets into the Eastern Caribbean sometime Monday p.m. And then we just got to watch what this does. We start to get into Tuesday mornings to a 962 millibar major hurricane. We start to see the southern shorelines of Hispaniola up here as we're getting to Tuesday evening. And then here comes Jamaica coming up on your screen. You notice how this number begins to rise. That means we have a weakening storm system. Okay, but, it hits Jamaica. It doesn't, I guess you could say, if we were going off this exactly happening, technically never makes a landfall on the southern shoreline of Jamaica, but it lashes the entire southern shoreline of Jamaica with the eye wall of this hurricane and brings massive flooding, strong hurricane force winds. Jamaica, you got to pay attention to this. And then this sneaks into the Western Caribbean. Watch out the Cayman Islands. And what is this going to do after this? Well, look, this begins to strengthen again as it gets into the Northwest Gulf of Mexico. And then it makes landfall. It's about to make landfall sometime Friday as a sub 960 millibar hurricane. The HFA model begins to deepen this sub 60, sub 960. Okay, don't let me mess up the numbers there. But this would be a category 4 hurricane if this is correct. So just another kind of reiterating how compact this storm is. Okay, and these are winds in knots. Okay, Barbados right here, Trinidad down here, Barbados, this goes right in between. Okay, the winds like in the kind of the greenish, like yellowish areas, those are tropical storm force wind gusts, like 40, 50, 60 mile per hour wind gust. Okay, and I mean, it's only showing like Barbados getting hit by those. So you really got to be tucked into the inner portion of this storm to get this area in like pink and purple right here, which is, like I said, your 80 to 100, 110 knot winds, your 90, 100, 120-mile-per-hour winds. Okay, and it looks like it squeezes in between this island and this one. Martinique up here, St. Vincent, Grenada down here. Those smaller islands in between, the Windward Islands, those are the islands that could get devastating impacts from this. And then, of course, this thing stays compact, and then we just got to watch what happens, as this continues, guys. And just another kind of graphic to show you, this is the GFS. This is predicted wind gust swath in miles per hour off the GFS, and you can tell it brings the worst of these winds. But it does hit, like, the St. Vincent region very hard. Has a projected wind gust of 66 miles per hour. But don't take this as exactly what's going to happen. I'm really showing you this just to show you guys how compact this is. Okay, you got to be in this eye wall to really get those awful impacts. But I don't want you guys to think that I'm kind of blowing off everybody else like up in Martinique. Guys, you guys are still going to see impacts from this. Trinidad, Barbados, you still are. But I'm telling you, the worst of it's going to be right into here. Now, this could tweak some. If it moves a little bit further north than forecast, and it could, especially if it continues to get really strong, then the worst of the impacts will shift closer to Martinique, for example. Okay, so just another way to look at impacts for this. This is the chance to see tropical storm force wind gusts, which is basically 40-mile-per-hour wind gusts or higher. If you live in that purple color, that's pretty much a 90 to 100% chance to see it. Okay. But you can tell, Jamaica's starting to get into this now where, you got that 70 to 80% chance to see tropical storm force wind gusts coming up middle way of this week. And the timeline of this, pause the screen if you need to. Getting to Tuesday late night into Wednesday, Jamaica, you start to see tropical storm force wind gusts. Could see it across the Greater Antilles too. But this is moving into the Windward Islands, as early as tonight into tomorrow. Okay, so this is on the way. What's wild is this is moving so fast, it feels like we still got a couple more days to prepare. But folks, this is heading right towards the Windward Islands over the next 12 to 18 hours. Okay, so this is coming up on you guys. I think tonight will be the last really big video that we can do for you folks before, it's pretty much looking outside and seeing what's going on. Okay, so I am praying for you guys. I'm very concerned about you guys. Just be aware of what's going on. Barbados, this is how much rainfall could happen. But guys, this is going to be moving so fast. I don't expect devastating rainfall amounts because this is going to be moving so fast. But of course, we do got to watch out in Haiti, the Dominican Republic, if this gets really close, because we got the higher terrain. We could deal with the rock and mud slides up here with the higher elevation. So, it does indicate lower confidence area in this kind of checkered area in the diamonds. But this is rainfall with this system. If we're talking about why this is doing so well, okay, the obvious thing here is this is sea surface temperatures. This is sea surface temperatures in Celsius, guys. It's not Fahrenheit. It's not 29 degrees Fahrenheit out here. That'd be pretty cold. This is in Celsius. So 28, 29 degrees Celsius is equivalent to the low to mid 80s in Fahrenheit. So, this thing is doing well and very warmer than average sea surface temperatures out here in the Atlantic. So, there's not even worth talking about this much. The sea surface temperatures out there are plenty warm enough for consistent development. It's not dealing with any issues with any cold water or anything like that. What's the most impressive with this is the upper wind pattern, which is leading to just consistent convection. When you get the consistent, stronger convection, you get a stronger and stronger hurricane. And we talked about this in the middle, in the first portion of the video. You see these streamlines, these are winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere, 35, 40,000 feet up in the air. So this is dealing with a favorable sort of tut interaction up here, and normally you don't associate favorable with a tut interaction, but there's an upper level kind of trough up here that's bringing winds kind of down here, but it's so far kind of up into here that it's not really affecting the system with shear. It's actually helping to pull upper level winds kind of away from this system like this. You see how the arrows are pointing like that, and then they kind of wrap around this upper ridge, which has also been helping this system. It's ultimately what's been pushing this system sort of east to west, right? And this has actually been helping to basically disperse air away from this storm. So, you take all that off and you kind of draw on this again. You see these arrows kind of pointing out away from the storm, kind of dispersing out like this, then like that, and even like this. And some of the arrows are kind of going towards the storm, but there's such light flow in the upper levels of the atmosphere. It's not really bothering this storm. Just in general, air's getting pushed out away from this storm. Cyclonic flow is going like this, obviously, around the hurricane, right? So you're thinking, well, at the upper levels of the atmosphere, if the winds are kind of going in the opposite direction, this has got to mess up the circulation. Well, it doesn't. Actually, in the upper levels of the atmosphere, where air is getting dispersed in maybe a totally different direction, this is actually pushing air away from the system, allowing for more air to rise, and that gets pushed away. More air rises, that gets pushed away. This allows for the continuation of shower and storm development and the strengthening of the storm system. Okay? So what happens, on down the road with the life of this system? Well, you keep this going, and I think it stays in a very favorable environment. A nice, healthy outflow, dispersing air away from the storm. It's right when it gets, I would say, into here. Notice the number, and this is the HAF model, begins to rise, which indicates a weakening system. It's right into here where I think it's going to encounter, a little bit of shear. Okay? That's probably going to affect this storm. I think it could interact with landmass in Hispaniola, and I think this begins to affect this storm. Now, one thing I will notice is the models was really showing a pretty potent tut or wave breaker right into here before, okay, that was throwing a lot of shear on the system as it gets into the Central Caribbean. And I still think there will be shear in the Central Caribbean, but models have kind of backed off from that idea. And, once upon a time, a couple days ago, they were showing this storm getting completely ripped apart in this area by shear and interaction with land. But the fact that it's staying in the Caribbean, and the tut influence is maybe weakening, is allowing for this to really survive maybe a more unfavorable time period in the Central Caribbean. Okay, and this continues. That number begins to kind of stay steady or rise. And I really think it's dealing with certainly some shear as it gets close to Jamaica. You can see how these kind of streamlines right here in the upper levels of the atmosphere are kind of abruptly going like this. But it's still dealing with a pretty, guys, I would say it's still dealing with a decent environment. I mean, you got a nice kind of strung out upper anticyclonic flow, but there's definitely going to be some shear in here, some southwest shear, and maybe some interaction with land. Okay, now once it gets into sort of the Western Caribbean right here, there is like no shear. That's why this deepens again rapidly as it approaches the Yucatan Peninsula right into here. Air is getting dispersed out from this system once again. Okay, and this really enters not only a favorable kind of period of strengthening. It could rapidly strengthen again if this is the way it plans out. That's why we do worry if this gets into the Gulf of Mexico. We don't know what the environmental background is going to be then, but we got to watch. But, you look at shear in the upper levels of the atmosphere, right? You can see the westerly shear right in here. And this is shear in, in about the mid-levels of the atmosphere, 200 millibar to 850 millibar. It's about the mid-levels of the atmosphere, right? So you notice that the winds in the mid-levels of the atmosphere is coming more so out the southwest. You see it coming right here, where you see those more vibrant colors, that indicates more shear. In the upper levels of the atmosphere, this is still working pretty well with this storm. Mid-levels, different direction, coming more so out the southwest. That is going to begin to impact this system, and I think affect really the western side of this system and allow for probably a little dry air to come in. So, and speaking of dry and moist air, right now it's doing so well, very moist environment. A lot of moist air associated in the green, and then the dry air associated in the brown color. Very moist air. It's not being affected because it has such a good upper wind pattern. But as it gets right here, you notice kind of right into here, you're not seeing as much green. A little bit of dry air kind of getting involved. Still very moist east side, but the west side starting to get a little bit of dry air kind of ate into it. All right, based off this run, the HAF model. Okay, but then it starts to wrap up again and develops a very tight, moist core of kind of cocooned of like moist air in place. So that's an update on those storms. Just to mention, there's still a 50% chance Invest 94L as it is starting to get into the as it's starting to get into the Bay of Campeche now. There's still a 50-50 shot this could develop into a depression over the next 24 hours. We'll watch this broad area low-level spin out here. And then, of course, a lot of odds are on this too. 70% chance for Invest 96L to develop sometime in the next 7 days. Okay, and let's see if we have another update from this, and we do not. So, latest information still 70. This could get bumped up to an 80% chance. Okay, so if we kind of take a look at what's going on with Invest 94L, we'll just have to take a look at water vapor loop here. You know, there is, if you kind of look up under all these mid to high level convection, there is a broad spin here, but this is going to enter kind of this area right in here, the Bay of Campeche, and it will have a chance to develop into a more closed, low-level circulation, and might quickly become a tropical depression, which will be Tropical Depression 3. Okay, but it only has another 24 hours to do this. Okay, and then we look at the wave behind Hurricane Beryl as the sun has rose on it. Very elongated wave, strung out. But at some point, we are going to watch for some kind of consolidation of energy here, and this is going to develop probably some low-level spin at some point, and this will most likely become a tropical depression, whether it's Tropical Depression 3 or 4. We're not sure, but this will probably happen sometime in the next few days, and this will most likely develop into a more healthy-looking system. But I have my thoughts on this, that this won't do as healthy as what the models are showing. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I think if anything's going to become Chris, it's going to be this thing right here. I just don't know if it's going to do the same exact thing as Beryl's going to do. But that's an update on the tropics, guys. I hope that helps. Now let's dive into what's going to happen weather-wise for today and see if we got some energy left over in the tank to do so. But so much going on, guys. It's wild. And I never want to shy away just from my regular forecast I do every single day. But this is what's going on across the lower 48. We got a lot of shower and storms going on across the southern and central apps. We got energy flowing across the northeast. We're waking up to some storms in the Delmarva area, a little bit of moisture in the southern tip of Florida, and we got a lot of rain, rounding a little bit of ridging here in the southern plains. Heavy rain, kind of just inching along. Guys, by the way, we're at day 20 without rain here in my neck of the woods. Day 20 has not rained since June the 10th. We missed again yesterday. The good news is today is the highest chance for rain at my house. So you guys pray that I see some rain. If I'm asking for a prayer request, that is my prayer request, that we get some rain today. But anyways, a lot of moisture kind of rounding this ridge here, and we got moisture kind of shooting across the northern Rockies, the Pacific Northwest too. But you know, if you look at watches, warnings, and advisories, the big theme today is heat advisories all the way up into the Delmarva areas of New Jersey. Excessive heat warnings along the Mississippi Delta region all the way down the Mississippi River into southeast Louisiana. The heat indices will be well over 110 degrees. Feels like temperatures. Flood watches up for areas of Kansas, Four Corners region, and a lot of heat on the way for California also. So, you know, outside of that, that's all that's going on. Excessive rainfall outlook, these areas in yellow, that means you have at least a 15% chance of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance. Oh, man, I ain't gonna lie, guys. I'm not gonna lie one bit. I hope that this 5% risk of flooding materializes at my specific house. I wouldn't mind a little bit of runoff. It's so dry, guys. My two big oak trees in my backyard are shedding leaves back here, and I hate that. I hate when you get such bad drought conditions that it ruins the foliage on your trees because it causes downstream effects in the fall. But anyways, let's hope the areas get rain that have not seen it today. So there's two main areas to watch. One is across the entire I-95 corridor, which has a slight risk, level 2 out of 5. A level 1 out of 5 risk does stretch all the way to almost to Atlanta, clear South Carolina just about, goes across the southern Alps. So an active day across the eastern U.S. And we do have a slight risk where we're watching a round of strong to severe storms will sweep across central and eastern Montana into North Dakota later today. A marginal risk extends all the way down into Colorado, and then we do have an isolated risk of level 1 out of 5 risk of severe weather for like Tucson and Phoenix. Tornado risk today, a 2% risk in the Northeast. Be mindful of that in the green. Big cities, D.C., Washington, Philadelphia, New York City, Boston. 2% risk of a tornado today. Wind threat, 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour in these two yellow areas. One across the entire I-95 corridor points west and east, and then one right here in Montana. And then the hail threat, not as high for the Northeast, but still a 15% risk here in Montana areas in North Dakota of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. So the Southeast today, it is going to be a very moist, hot, miserable air mass. You know, when I get home from church, I don't plan on going outside today. It's just one of those days where it's too hot even for the toughest of people to go outside. Just brutal. But by the time we get into the early to middle portion of this afternoon, we're going to see a lot of widespread shower and storm activity developing ahead of this frontal boundary where it's very moist, very unstable. So as you can tell, from central Tennessee down to the deep south, across Georgia and the Carolinas, Florida, to Virginia, widespread showers and storms. Some of these will be strong to severe as we do have that marginal and slight risk in place. And these will drift. These will have some motion to it because it's driven by that frontal boundary, okay, this trough. So these aren't going to pop up and stay in one spot. A little bit more of an uncommon setup. And summer, this is actually going to bring some dry air to the southeast for about a whopping day or two. Could bring low temperatures into the 60s for certain areas as we move into the first day or two or morning or two of July. But a lot of rain has an opportunity to fall in areas that has not seen it. So we'll see what happens here. We got to watch this little system right off the coast of the Carolinas and Virginia. But we're waking up tomorrow morning to a lot of rain across the eastern sections of North Carolina. But a closer look at this entire area, you see the southern Alps region, Carolinas, Tennessee, etc. Look how those storms basically just explode later on this afternoon. I mean, anywhere could see it, guys. I don't want to mention every single area, but eastern Kentucky, central and eastern Tennessee, across Virginia, the Carolinas, Georgia, Alabama, everybody has a pretty even shot to see strong to severe storms today. And if it's not strong, I mean, it'll at least bring some much needed rain. I think anybody could use the rain in this area right here, but this will make its way through. Some areas might see no rain, unfortunately. Some might see 1 or 2 rounds of rain. So these will kind of move in and move out. It's kind of one of those days, guys, where it's going to be hard to figure out who's going to see what. You just kind of have to watch the radar. That's why I always recommend, a reliable radar. But some of these could produce some gusty winds. You see splotches of winds producing 30, 40 mile per hour winds, or storms producing 30 to 40 mile per hour winds. So be aware of that. Up here in the Northeast, a broad look at things. Here comes all these storms. Watch out for these discrete storms in southern New England, southern Vermont, New Hampshire. Look at this one up here in Maine. Any of these storms that get discrete will have a low-end tornado risk to them. Okay, so be aware of that. They will eventually grow upscale, maybe cluster up into a line of storms, affect all of southern New England, could move into New York City, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, getting into New Jersey later this afternoon. We could get another area of showers and storms that develops behind this into this evening across the same areas. And these could bring some high-end impacts, damaging winds, some hail, and that tornado risk as we're getting into tonight. But just a little bit closer look at the mid-Atlantic. Look at those storms developing. Boom, they fire here in central Virginia, Maryland. Look at these storms up near Scranton. And watch out in areas of southeast PA, northern Delaware, the Delmarva area, Maryland. If you're vacationing in some of the coastal regions in the mid-Atlantic, it's going to be a hot day, but be aware of the storms to your west that will move in from west to east. Long Island getting some storms this afternoon, this evening. Certainly going to be just a stormy dinner time for your Sunday evening across the I-95 corridor of the mid-Atlantic from the Carolinas, all the way up into southern New England. And then we could have the development of another line of storms behind this that kind of moves over the same area. So if you're missing the first line, you might get hit again. So heads up, even like New York City, higher populated regions could get a lot of unsettled weather today. And we'll have to watch out just for more storms that'll kind of continue to fire here in eastern North Carolina. But, talking about that tornado threat in these areas today, you cannot rule it out. In fact, that updraft velocity swath looks really highlighted up here in southern New England. New Jersey, eastern PA, you're seeing some highlighted colors indicating rotation of some of these storms. These could definitely produce, guys. And if you look at the swaths here, the projected wind gust swaths, you see some embedded 60, 65 mile per hour winds, 50 to 60 mile per hour winds in these storms. So these will produce some damaging winds where some of the most intense storms are. So a little bit further up the road here in Maine, these storms could be a little bit more discreet in Maine. Okay, heads up. Bangor, Augusta, Portland, down here to Concord, New Hampshire, Boston, these storms could certainly be more discreet. I wouldn't be surprised we get a couple tornado warnings up here in the Northeast today, the upper portion of the Northeast, New England. Look at that line of storms moving through Boston. Later this afternoon, we got storms affecting the down east areas of Maine, and then they could reform along the coastal regions of Maine, not rain. We'll get rain in Maine. But later this evening, and then I think we're done with it as we are getting into tomorrow morning. But, the updraft Felicity swath, like I said, be mindful of this. It really wants to hit the coastal regions of Maine pretty good with a tornado risk on this run of the HRRR model, indicating that rotation with these storms, stronger updrafts, rotating updrafts. I wouldn't be surprised if they put a 5% risk of a tornado somewhere up here, New Hampshire, Maine, and the next update or two. We'll have to watch for this. And then if we look at the projected wind gust swath from the latest HRRR model, guys, and could get some gusty winds with these storms, no doubt here. The south central U.S., we're going to deal with, kind of glitchy here, we're going to deal with a lot of shower and storm activity here in Kansas. This will sneak into southern Nebraska throughout the morning hours. We're starting to get into the afternoon. We're probably going to get the development of storm activity in Oklahoma. Very popcorn in nature here in Arkansas. You're going to be begging for some rain in this area, kind of rotating around the flow around this ridge. And we're probably going to get some storms in Arkansas, Louisiana, maybe eastern Texas. But not everybody's going to see rain in this. Very popcorn, kind of pop up in nature out here. I think, Texas is going to remain dry. Starting to dry out in Texas. Haven't gotten widespread rain for Texas in a while. We've had areas that have seen rain, but not widespread rain. You guys have to give me an update on how y'all are doing in Texas, because you guys haven't seen a huge area of rain in a while in like central Texas. So we'll watch these strong to severe storms in eastern Colorado. Could get some strong to severe storms in all of Colorado and New Mexico. But if you live in eastern Colorado, be mindful of these storms later on this afternoon to this evening. And these could work their way around the upper portion of this weak ridging in place as we're getting into Kansas, southern Nebraska, into the overnight hours. And we're probably going to wake up to a very wet start in like Kansas City and northwestern Missouri, all the way up to Omaha. Lincoln could wake up to some storms to kickstart your July 1st. So that's what's going on today in the southern plains. Up here in the north central U.S., guys, it's pretty quiet. A little bit of rain in Nebraska could greet you guys in eastern Nebraska. We'll have to watch those storms in the northern plains, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But the immediate Great Lakes region, the upper Midwest, the Midwest, a beautiful Sunday expected, quiet weather. But as we are getting into our Monday morning, we're going to have the increase of moisture, and we got, once again, another round of rain and storms entering the picture to kickstart your work week. But a closer look at the northern plains here. Okay, nothing going on through midday. These storms will start to fire here in Wyoming. But I'm really concerned about, I would watch Wyoming getting into the Dakotas and western Nebraska. I am concerned about my friends up here in central Montana and to eastern Montana. This line of storms moving through could pack a punch. Watch out, Glasgow. Brain farting here. Anyways, I've been talking for way too long here. We're getting into this evening. Just watch for a line of storms that makes its way through eastern Montana, getting into western North Dakota later on tonight, and then it'll begin to weaken. But we'll certainly watch for all of this. And look at that blue showing up for the first day of July. Those higher elevations of Yellowstone National Park. Pretty wild stuff. So be aware of this, as far as the projected wind gusts from this. Let's go back to this. It does show some very intense winds if these storms can get going. This is like 70, 80 mile per hour wind gusts with this line of storms. So hopefully it doesn't pack this much of a punch, but it has an opportunity to do so. Some damaging winds possible in eastern Montana today. So the rest of the West, we'll deal with some showers and maybe a little bit of storm activity in western Montana, but a lot of shower and storm activity across the Four Corners region. Southern Arizona, Tucson to Phoenix, could get a strong to severe storm or two. Watch out for some haboobs today. Certainly need to watch out for that. But certainly a nice spin out here, rumbling over the Four Corners region that will continue just to bring a funnel of shower and storm activity even into the overnight hours. This maintains itself well into the overnight hours. And just a closer look at how much rain you guys could potentially get. Phoenix to Tucson, definitely some rain is possible with this. Could get over an inch of rain in southern Arizona. Higher amounts of rain in northern New Mexico, areas of southwestern and southern areas of Colorado. Half inch to an inch of rain is possible. Temperatures today will be absolutely brutal across the southeast. You might not hit 100 degrees, but you'll be in the mid to upper 90s with dew points well into the mid to upper 70s. So it'll just be awfully humid today south of the boundary that you can obviously tell is right in here. Everybody north of the boundary will be in the 70s. A nice day in the 60s in the Great Lakes region. A chilly day for the last day of June standards. Pretty warm ahead of this boundary in the northeast, the 80s, maybe some low 90s. Hot in Texas and Oklahoma. and then just average type conditions out west. Folks, that's all I got. I will end this video by seeing if we can catch one last update on the tropics. I'd like to try to do this. And we do. We got an update, and it is still looks like a 100-mile-per-hour hurricane as of right now. So we'll continue to feed you guys updated information. I will do another update this evening. God bless all y'all, and y'all have a wonderful and safe Sunday.